and again, just to be clear for everybody, you don't have a PhD in science, you don't even have a
No,
degree in science.
no.
You literally took on a job, you are a qualified teacher, but you literally took on a job to teach science to the general public, and in a way that is almost controversial
Yes, yeah.
for the science communication, industry, let's call it. Have you gotten any flack from scientists?
Yes, you guys can't see it right now, but I am nodding my head even. Yeah, I did, but I'm a pretty vocal person, when it comes to, biases in that sense, right? Like, but yeah, I got people telling me, well, maybe you should get your supervisor to look over that script because, you don't have a science background, or, you're not going to get anywhere with this because you don't have a science background. And I kept going, well, what is a science background? Like, and one of my coworkers actually kind of said it in a really great way. He said, well, he has his master's in, oh my gosh, Tyler, if you're listening to this, I apologize, but he has his master's in astro something with the stars, okay?
Yeah.
And he explained it like this. He said, if everyone was a scientist, so imagine for a moment, and this is not like to negate anything. This is not to say that this isn't okay, but everyone in science specializes in something, right? Because there's so much out there that you don't have a choice but to pick or choose kind of your specialized area. Everyone is specializing. He says, if everyone does that, then no one understands each other. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But he says, so think of it this way. He says, you need people that aren't specialized in it to go, okay, wait, hold up a second. What are you saying? What is the importance of the message that you're giving me? Like just simple things, right? Like I remember talking about static electricity and trying to understand better, because I didn't realize, to me, static electricity was something that we all understand because we all, well, have felt it at
Mhm.
some point in time. But then understanding that there's more to it than that the electrons and the protons and the neutrons, and if you have an isolator, and if you like all of this other stuff. And I'm like, hey, hold on, Tyler, like hold on, like what are you trying to get me to understand? He's like, well, there's positive and negative, and when they meet, they like, I was like, okay, that's what we need. Like that's kind of the point of it, right? So like a lot of times I would get people telling me like, oh, are you sure that's what it is? And I'm like, yeah, I'm 100% sure. Like I remember a conversation with my supervisor, and we're sitting there, and I was explaining to her that as you age, this is we were doing hearing tests. We were talking about sound vibrations and how as an adult, like, so between certain ages you hear really well, and then you get older at around, I can't remember if it was 32 now or 34, but there's a certain age where your ears start actually deteriorating, so your ears can no longer hear what they used to hear when you were younger. And she turns to me and she says, that's not true. And I go, yeah, it is. And she says, and she's a person that has degrees in other things, right? So and I'm like, yeah, no, search it up. She went and looked it up, and I was right. And she's like, I'm so sorry. But like a lot of times people don't seem to think that just because you don't have that paper doesn't mean that you can't have a passion for the science. Like learning all this stuff, and understanding the importance of reading proper documents, or reading documents that like people aren't faking, right? So all the scientific journals, and understanding what they're saying in there does take a kind of, in my opinion, a creative person to understand it, to bring it to the public's eye. And that's where the science communication comes in handy, right? Is I am your general public. So for me to be able to bring it through my brain and shoot it out in a creative fashion is more useful than somebody who has a, maybe not always more useful, like I feel like stipulation at the bottom of the screen, but like in cases like at Science North, right? Like or explaining science even in the classroom is just teaching like, okay, but this is what he's saying, and not using these big words that mean or and are important. And if you are studying that, 100% important, but when you're teaching it to general public, it's not, you're putting it in my head and it's going out like that, right? Like, so I find that to me, as an artist, as somebody, like that's what we do, right? Like when I'm writing a play, when I am acting in a play, my whole purpose is to be able to give the message to my audience. So for me, having a background in science isn't a necessary for teaching science and for passing science along. Like, I also think that, like, if you see me in person, and maybe in my pictures you can see that too, but I am a person who enjoys dyeing my hair all fun colors, and I find that that's another way to make science accessible. Like, I remember thinking or getting a comment on one of my videos that I do with Science North, and them saying, wow, you've made science accept, or not acceptable, but accessible, because of the way that you look. Because a lot of times we assume that scientists, we all have the image of Albert Einstein, right? Like we all think like, oh, it's an old man with glasses and a beard. Like that's a scientist. Like, okay. And then there's people, well, like yourself and me, who come along who have either no hair or some hair or colored hair or like piercings and tattoos. And we come in and we're like, yo, man, check out the science. Like, did you know that methane can do this? Like, right? Like there's that joy in it, that oh right, like if that chick can do it, I can too.